day and welcome, America and beyond. Tom Donahue, Tom Donahue Reports, Patriotism in Action, Monday edition, United States Constitution Day, celebrating the 225th anniversary today, September the 17th, 2012. 1787 was the actual date, 225 years ago. But most shows are not, or programs are not discussing that because it's irrelevant. As Mitt Romney pointed to Ron Paul when a constitutional question was posed, oh, he's the constitutionalist over there. Well, I'm a proud constitutional crusader, one of the original in talk radio. And yes, I used that moniker. Wasn't the name of the program. It was America's Town Forum, which later became Free Thinker Radio, which eventually became Tom Donahue Reports. And I'm so glad to be with you. Friday, I took a day away. We had a best of program. Thank you, although, for joining us on that day. And I am striving to have fill-ins, and it just didn't quite work out that way. But nevertheless, from time to time, we may do a best of program. We're going to get into other issues, too. Last year, and I think even the year prior, we spent the entire day on the Constitution. Today, I'm not quite prepared to do that. I mean, I could be. But I was doing a little research prior to the broadcast, and there were very few stories. You know, if you do your internet searches, or you say Google searches, like Xeroxes and photocopies, and you would think there'd be more. But one of the things that I found that I was actually somewhat unaware of was in 2004, a proclamation was actually passed to make Constitution Day a national holiday. Maybe not in the ways that other holidays are, but it actually talked about the fact that, it should be considered more as a voluntary holiday. But if you were to look at federal or national holidays, there's only a few that would come to mind that could even be somewhat relevant. And that would be Independence Day, 4th of July. It would be Constitution Day. I would have to think that we could even put the Bill of Rights Day. Those would all be appropriate and something that would be considered still voluntary, I believe, but still considered national holidays in terms of what we revere or celebrate or hold near and dear. Now, even though there are religious or spiritual days, unless, of course, Christmas, well, you're celebrating Christ allegedly, supposedly, but it offends so many that want us to be PC and don't impose your belief or faith. Well, the problem is that Christ wasn't born that day. And most people are celebrating Xmas. Then you got Easter buddies. Although that's not really a national holiday, but people still celebrate it as a religious holiday. They call it Easter, which is really Estar, which is actually the fertility god. It has nothing to do, the rapid reproduction of bunny rabbits has nothing to do with, fertility goddesses and reproductive organs and the byproduct thereof has very little to do, quite frankly, with the actual Resurrection Day. So anytime I refer to that, I call it Resurrection Day, never Easter. And if Jesus is the reason for the season, well, great. Every day should be, if you actually understand or believe. But you don't have to. I'm not here to proselytize. I'm not here to make this into a religious broadcast. But I do infuse spirituality. Because if you don't infuse into a broadcast morality, I'm not talking about judgment and blame and that kind of thing. I'm talking about the fact that when we talk about politics or the culture, if there's not the moral compass, spiritual underpinnings, if we're not a moral nation, we're not a just nation. And so morals do matter. So this program is about liberty, the pursuit thereof, freedom forward, truth in all matters, seeking it, telling it, and trafficking only in the truth to the best of our ability. It's about justice. And so when we talk about the Constitution, and right here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we have the U.S. Constitution Center, National Constitution Center. We have Independence Hall. We have the Liberty Bell. And I would highly recommend, if you're going to be in Philadelphia, to take the time. And you got some nice restaurants in the area, and Penn's Landing, and also you should take it in. You should definitely make a day of it. And I'm always in awe of that area. And I'm not the most metaphysical person. I like to think of myself more as a spiritual person. But I do feel like a little bit of a sixth sense. And I do sense the spirits. And I do sense, I know I'm always inspired by spending time in that area. And so on this day, 225-year anniversary, and some people say, well, it's the Articles of Confederation. Okay, fine, great, all right, wonderful. But you have to remember, the United States Constitution more or less shackled the government. Now, they keep trying to find little, as much wiggle room as they can get, and they try to distort the founders' intentions. But the United States Constitution had more to do with, okay, these are your obligations, these are your duties, these are your limitations. And it was the limitations on power. And it was a division of powers. And so the United States Constitution is very important. I think the Declaration is more important. I think even the Bill of Rights is more important because it didn't give us rights. All it did was saying that the grantor is the creator. And government's only there to protect, secure, and defend those individual rights, those inherent rights, those God-gifted and granted and embedded rights. So on this day, when everybody's talking about Obama versus Romney or the Middle East madness, we here are doing something a little different. But we'll talk about that too. And I've done past programs where we devoted the entire program on constitutional issues. But I do wanted to start the opening monologue, and I wanted to let you know that, yes, I did remember, and it's worthy of remembrance, and to some degree even reverence, because that even though other countries are now starting to look beyond our Constitution, many that really want a true republic, putting the individual first, as opposed to government first, and realizing, that God is the grantor of the rights, the gifter of those rights, not government, then they do look towards the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, in the formation or reformation of their nation. And so that's why I believe it's that important to discuss that today, September the 17th, 2012, 225 years later, on Constitution Day, the United States Constitution Day. Welcome back, Tom Donahue. Tom Donahue Reports, Patriotism in Action, Proud Protectionist, Constitutionalist, Constitutional Crusader, absolutely. And free thinker, political independent, have been, will remain so. But I'm right here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My current residence, my birthplace, the cradle of liberty. Absolutely. 225-year anniversary of the United States Constitution. Now, again, in terms of a hierarchy or the pinnacle of political prestige, I would have to place the Declaration of Independence at the top. In terms of human documents, I think divinely inspired, but still human documents of man. And then I would place the Bill of Rights second. And thirdly, I would place the United States Constitution. Now, we can go back to the Articles of Confederation, various other writings, and of course, there's other political documents. But I'm talking about the ones that we live, I wish our government lived by. But actually, you want to talk about mandates? The Constitution mandates certain prohibitions, limitations, the do's and don'ts of government. Doesn't mean they abide by it, but the founders were very clear, and they were very resolute in what was to be mandated in terms of requirements, obligations, duties, responsibilities, and limitations. Absolutely. But I'm looking at some of the information that I had researched, and here's something that is called Constitution Day. It's also considered Citizenship Day. Is an American federal observance that recognizes the adoption of the United States Constitution and those who have become U.S. citizens. It's observed on September 17th, the day of the United States Constitutional Convention and the signing of the United States Constitution in 1787, on this very day, September the 17th. The law establishing the holiday was created in, it might surprise you, 2004, with the passage of an amendment by none other than Senator Robert Byrd to an omnibus spending bill in 2004. Before this law was enacted, the holiday was known as Citizenship Day. In addition to renaming the holiday Constitution Day, the Act mandates, and there's that word again, that all publicly funded educational institutions provide educational programming on the history of the American Constitution. In May 2005, the United States Department of Education announced the enactment of this law and that it would apply to any school receiving federal funds of any kind. This holiday is not observed by granting time off from work for federal employees, though. When the Constitution Day falls on a weekend or another holiday, schools and other institutions that observe the holiday on an adjacent weekday. This was the case in 2005 and 11, when Constitution Day was generally observed on Friday, the day prior, September 16th. Universities and colleges nationwide have created the United States Constitution and Citizenship Weeks in order to meet the requirements of the law. How many of you knew this? I didn't know that it was mandated. I didn't. So Citizenship Day morphed into United States Constitution Day, and an attachment to an omnibus spending bill, and a guy who is considered to be, well, one of the most liberal and certainly tax and spend and biggest spender of all time, binge spending, former Senator, actually, well, not just former Senator, but the deceased Robert Byrd. I think he was still in the Senate at 90 from the great state of West Virginia. But many of you may not be aware of that. So you might say, well, it's just a factoid in history. Get back to speaking about Obama and Romney. Well, you can just shut the hell up because I'll do what I want. You say, well, who are you talking to, Tom? Well, I'm talking to people that mumble and grumble. They just want to get back to petty partisan politics and have that kind of political agenda. I have an agenda, but it overrides both of these contrived, controlled corporate political parties. And it all goes back to our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. You know, being independent and being independent-minded is very important and very difficult to find these days, whether it's programming, whether it's just the average person. When they say, oh, he's a political independent, most people really aren't politically independent. And so I do have an agenda. My agenda is about liberty and freedom and justice and truth. And that's where I stand. So for those of you that didn't know, maybe these are some interesting facts now in evidence. But Constitution Day, you know, could you imagine? I mean, it took someone like Robert Byrd. I don't know where he got the inspiration. I mean, this guy generally spent more time worrying about well, in his old days, in his early days, there's no question about this, he had ties to the KKK. You say, well, that was the 1940s. Well, and so it made it right to be part of the hooded KKK? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he was a Democrat. But they say he, like many, they evolved over time. So you have a spending bill, of all places, to hide this new federal holiday that would not allow for, which is, I wish there were no paid federal holidays for at least the public sector. Hey, private sector, if an employer wants to pay you, a boss wants to pay you, you want to pay people that work for you, hey, that's fine. It's up to you. It shouldn't come out of the taxpayer coffers. So we have a federal, and again, maybe, I'm not sure what I said as it relates to this. This part I didn't know when I talked about this. I broadcast it. Was it 2009 or was it 2010? It was either 9 or 10. I broadcast it from the National Constitution Center and even spoke with Janine Turner, who has a really fine group. I'm not as worried about an actress's and, opinions or her perspective, but I was very pleased with the fact that that she has, an organization constituting us. I believe this is the organization. I have it tied to some of my logos or you'd say banners on the website at TomDonahueReports.com. If you were to go to my website, and no, I didn't update the website except for my picture. I just had a recent picture taken with my headset on. So, everyone kept saying, it looks too stilted, looks too stiff. You need a new picture. And why don't you make it more radio relatable? So that's fun. That's the actual new headset with microphone that I use. So there you go. But if you were to click through on some of the constitutional banners on my website, it'll take you to Janine Turner's organization. Now, the 10th Amendment Center will take you to the 10th Amendment Center. The banner ad I have there. And they're not paid. They're just, I just want to remind people the importance of these documents. So for instance, if you were to click on, I believe, We the People. Let's see that. That's all the quotes from the Founding Fathers. That's kind of a cool website, too. I'm going to go over some of this and continue this theme. But I'll get to some other issues, too, in due time, in my own good old time. We are live. It's the Monday edition. It's the 225th anniversary of the United States Constitution. Right back, hold tight. Welcome back, Tom Donahue Reports, Patriotism in Action. Again, I don't favor national or federalized holidays, especially taxpayer-supported. But I have to say, probably the only act that was, and it was still done kind of, well, it was legal, but it was kind of covert, sub rosa, if you will, under wraps, attaching a bill to an omnibus spending bill. Robert Byrd was able to sneak through this national or federal holiday commemorating the anniversary of the United States Constitution. Now, some might say that, well, that's part of propping up his legacy. Some might say that, well, there's certain provisions within the United States Constitution that give or grant certain powers to the federal government. Yeah, but they're limited. Now, I think the Commerce Clause was something that was somewhat dubious, but the founders, I don't think, realized what that could become. And then it could open the Pandora's box to greater federal, intrusion and trespassing into the states. But there had to be some way that in a limited, although somewhat unified, these several states, that there had to be a way that the national government could work within the states when needed, and to be able to regulate commerce and relate and various other activities that were interstate, and be able to somehow, I guess, negotiate or to be able to arbitrate issues that would arise that would involve more than just the individual states. So how does one, resolve disputes and issues that go beyond one's, state lines or the borders of those individual sovereign states? But nevertheless, if there were not such stringent limitations on a variety of things, I think we would be under complete and total abject tyranny, and there would not be even be a resemblance of our republic as we have today, as imperfect in terms of application and reality in 2012. But nevertheless, if you're going to look at national or federal holidays, you have to look at these important documents that the founders and framers helped create and bring into existence on those days. But as long as it's not being paid for, but I think celebrations and I think days of recognition and remembrance are important. But why can't we do this with all these national holidays, that they're not federally funded or underwritten or mandated, even though this, in terms of education, but I guess if you're taking federal dollars, well, the federal government would have some say and jurisdiction. And if you're going to look at a mandate that you would say, hey, I kind of like, I know, and again, it's a slippery slope, but if all institutions of higher learning receive federal dollars, they're supposed to be talking about the United States Constitution on this day, and perhaps as many are this week. And so those kind of reminders and remembrance is a good thing. But again, we don't have to look to the federal government for those reminders, although some would argue that it's better than nothing because so few remember and so few will actually celebrate or commemorate or support or share with others this important day in history. But it is the 225th anniversary, and we are talking about the United States Constitution. And no, I'm not. I think the last couple of years I've read many, many passages from the Constitution, and I think you can do that on your own. I didn't really feel motivated to start reading verbatim, although I have at times, and sometimes it has nothing to do with a day of celebration or commemoration. But I do believe that we should, and there's many days, that I bring to the table my views and my, concerns or whatever it is that we're talking about, whether it's 9/11, whether it's July 4th, Independence Day. There's various other days that we talk about based on United States history or world history or the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I know you might listen to some whacked out programming that, if it's not the Articles of Confederation and the Founding Fathers are all Masons and they all conspired against us, and okay, who are your heroes then? Is or are they all zeros? Is it just you and your little band of, I won't say it, but it amazes me that if it's not an utterance from some talking head with 5 followers, and they have their little group, and they want to just blame and hate and just focus on everybody and everything else is bad. Well, I'll take Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and various other founding fathers over you piece of crap. I mean, some of these mental midgets, these crude cretins, and they want to put themselves in the same. I mean, I love it when they talk as though like they are some kind of founder or they're some kind of wellspring of knowledge and information and that they're some kind of oracle. Really? I mean, many of these folks I don't even think they can put together sentences. Syntax, grammar, their verbal skills are just puny and pathetic. And these are people that would compete with the great minds of the founding fathers. Seriously? But they're too old school. They're great granddaddies of the Patriot movement. I mean, really, if those founders were alive today, there's no doubt that they would have blogs. There's no doubt that they would have they'd be using the social media. They would be using maybe even talk radio. They would be broadcasting somehow, some way, their views to the masses. They wouldn't sound like the haters and blamers. I can guarantee you that. They would be articulate. They would be intelligent. They'd be well informed. People say, well, everybody's entitled to an opinion. That is true. But the only opinions that hold regard with me are informed opinions. And if you're uninformed and uneducated, and you're rude and crude and lewd, you're not welcome. You say, oh, well, you sound so highbrow. No, I don't have time for illiterates. I don't have time for inbreds. I don't have time for the uninformed, because we have access to a universe of information where you don't even have to go to a library. You don't even have to go out and purchase a book or a newspaper. The world is your oyster. You have that information. The intelligence is there if you choose to tap into it. Now, you still have to be the discerner and the decider. But if you're not an informed voter, an informed listener or caller, you can only blame yourself. Stop blaming your parents or the media or whomever. There's no time to blame anybody but yourself. What have you done lately for your country? What have you done lately for your family? What have you done lately for your community? Let alone yourself. Stop blaming everybody else. I mean, it's a time now that we have to take hold. We have to take action. And that's what I've tried to do for the last 3 decades. You know that I haven't, well, I probably should mention it, and I'll probably bring it up or carry it forward in the second hour. In 1987, for the bicentennial celebration. That's right. 25 years ago, this young lad, Tom Donahue, and his organization, ALA, the American Liberty Association, was selected by the Dallas Morning News as the person and the organization that most represented the principles and the precepts of the Founding Fathers. And so we were selected as the group, and they called us monetary revolutionaries, for the bicentennial celebration of the Constitution, an 8-page layout, the Dallas Morning News, Dallas Life magazine. They call us monetary revolutionaries. They believe a secret conspiracy rules the world. They believe having a Social Security number gives ground to the enemy. They believe that they can do what they want with their money. More to come, Tom Donahue. Tom Donahue reports, still fighting on for truth, liberty, justice, and the American way.